ChatGPT said. The great hall of the alien capital was filled with bright blue and silver light. Banners of two worlds hung side by side, Earth and the Jirani Empire. The war that had lasted for years had finally ended. The air smelled of metal and smoke, but also of relief. Human soldiers stood tall, their armor scratched and dented, their faces tired yet proud. On the other side, alien nobles in shining robes stood silently, watching the humans with unreadable expressions. The peace treaty between the two sides was strange and full of traditions no human had seen before. One of those traditions was called the honor gift. Each victorious human could choose one rescued Jirani citizen as a symbol of peace and unity. It was supposed to honor both sides, but everyone knew it was mostly to show who had won the war. One by one, the human soldiers made their choices. Most picked the most graceful Jirani women, tall, elegant, with skin that shimmered faintly under the silver light. They bowed their heads politely and went with their new human protectors. The hall was full of quiet whispers, the sound of boots, and the soft hum of alien translators repeating the ceremony words. Then came Captain Ryan Hale's turn. He was a decorated soldier, known for leading his unit through impossible battles. Many believed he would be given a medal or an important post back on Earth. But instead of standing proudly, Ryan looked calm and serious. His brown hair was messy from weeks of travel, and his uniform was still stained with dust from the battlefield. As he walked down the long line of Jirani women, whispers followed him. Every soldier watched, waiting to see which one he would choose. The aliens, too, watched closely. Ryan passed the first few women without a word, then the next, and the next. The alien nobles frowned, wondering what he was doing. Finally, at the very end of the line, he stopped. There stood a woman who looked out of place among the others. She wasn't glowing or graceful. Her skin had uneven marks, her hair dull compared to the silver-blue waves of her people. She stood quietly, her eyes down, her hands folded together. Ryan looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, clearly and calmly, "I choose her." The hall went silent. The translator repeated his words in the alien tongue, and gasps filled the room. The alien officials looked confused. Even the humans stared at him, unsure if they had heard correctly. "That one?" one of the soldiers muttered softly. "Why her?" But Ryan didn't answer. He simply stood tall, his eyes steady. The alien overseer gave a stiff nod and confirmed the choice. There were rules, and no one could question a human's decision in the ceremony. The woman lifted her eyes for the first time. She looked directly at Ryan, as if searching for some reason in his face. Then, without a word, she lowered her gaze again. When they left the hall, some of the human soldiers joked quietly, trying to understand his decision. Others whispered that he had lost his mind. But Ryan didn't respond to any of them. When one of them finally asked him straight, "Why'd you choose her, Captain? You passed the prettiest ones for someone who barely looked at you," Ryan only said, "Because she's the only one who didn't look afraid." The others said nothing after that. That night, aboard the human flagship orbiting the alien capital, Ryan found the woman sitting near a viewing window. She looked out at the stars silently, her face calm, her posture polite. He brought her some water and a blanket, but she shook her head, saying quietly, "I do not need comfort." He smiled slightly. "You're allowed to. The war's over now." She didn't answer. The quiet stretched between them until she finally asked in a soft voice, "Why did you choose me?" Ryan leaned on the wall beside her. "Because I remember you." The words made her turn toward him. Her eyes, gray with faint traces of violet, narrowed. "You can't," she said quietly. "We've never met." "Yes, we have," Ryan replied. "It was 3 years ago, on Daris 9. My squad was trapped after the bombing. We were dying in the ruins of that medical base, and someone came. A Jirani medic. She disobeyed orders, crossed the line, and saved us." She looked away, her fingers tightening on the edge of her robe. He continued, "You wore a mask that day, but I remember your eyes. You looked at me just like this, calm, steady, not afraid. Then you disappeared before we could even thank you. For a moment, she didn't breathe. Then, in a whisper so low he could barely hear, she said, "You shouldn't have chosen me, Captain." "Why?" he asked. "Because some things are safer when they stay forgotten." Her voice trembled slightly. She stood up and turned her back to him, staring out the window again. Ryan watched her in silence. There was something in her, movements careful, measured, as if she had spent years hiding who she was. He said softly, "Whatever you're running from, you don't have to anymore." Her shoulders stiffened, but she didn't turn around. "You don't understand. You may have ended the war, but I am part of a secret that could start another one." Before he could ask what she meant, the ship's intercom called him to the command deck. He gave her a reassuring nod and left. She stayed by the window, her eyes full of quiet fear. Far below them, in the alien capital, a message was already spreading. A shadowy figure in the royal palace replayed the recording of the ceremony. The moment Ryan spoke his choice, the figure paused the footage and zoomed in on the woman's face. "Impossible," the voice whispered. "She's alive." The message was sent through secret channels straight to the throne world of the Jirani Empire. In a vast hall of crystal and fire, the Empress herself watched the footage. Her golden eyes burned as she recognized the face she had once believed lost forever. The Empress stood slowly, her robe flowing like liquid light. "Sira," she whispered, "my daughter." An aide beside her trembled. "Your Majesty, shall we send a retrieval team?" The Empress's voice hardened. "No. We send hunters. If she is alive among humans, it means danger. If they learn who she truly is, everything will fall apart. She cannot be allowed to reach their world." She turned toward the stars, her expression unreadable. "The humans think they have taken a servant," she murmured, "but they have taken the last heir of our empire." Back on the human ship, Ryan looked out at the same stars without knowing any of this. The woman he had chosen sat quietly in her quarters, her hands trembling as she hid a small pendant under her robe, a pendant with the royal insignia of the Jirani. She whispered to herself, "He should never have remembered me." But deep, inside, another voice whispered too, one she hadn't heard in years. It said maybe fate remembered for him. The stars outside the ship looked peaceful, but Ryan Hale knew better. Peace never lasted long in the galaxy. The war had ended, but the silence that followed felt heavy, like the calm before another storm. He often found himself watching the woman he had chosen, Sira, as she moved quietly around the ship. She spoke little, kept mostly to herself, and helped the medical team whenever she could. The crew had started to like her. Even the hard-faced engineers would smile when she brought them water or cleaned their bandages after long shifts. Still, something about her felt distant, hidden. Ryan could sense that she carried a weight no one could see. One night, when most of the crew was asleep, he found her in the cargo bay staring out at the stars again. The light from the nearby nebula glowed faintly on her face. He walked up beside her and asked softly, "You don't sleep much, do you?" She smiled faintly. "I am used to staying awake. Dreams are not kind to me." He crossed his arms. "You said before that I shouldn't have chosen you. I think I deserve to know why." Sira hesitated. She looked down, her fingers gripping the railing. "Because my name brings danger. Because the people I left behind would rather destroy me than let me live." Ryan frowned. "You talk like you were part of something powerful." She gave a quiet laugh, full of sadness. "I was part of something broken." Before he could ask more, an alarm broke through the silence. Red lights flashed across the corridor, and a voice came over the intercom. "Captain Hale, unidentified ships approaching from hyperspace." Ryan rushed to the command deck, and Sira followed. On the screen, 6 small crafts appeared, moving fast. Their shapes were unmistakable, Jirani hunter ships built for pursuit and silent kills. "How did they find us?" the navigator shouted. Ryan's jaw tightened. "They're not after us. They're after her." Every head on the bridge turned toward Sira. She stood still, eyes wide but calm. "You can't fight them," she said quietly. "They'll destroy the ship." Ryan turned to her. "You said your people would rather destroy you than let you live. Why?" She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, tears glimmered in the dim red light. "Because I was born to rule them." No one spoke. The crew exchanged shocked glances. "I was the Empress's only daughter," Sira said in a trembling voice. "I refused to continue the war. I saw too much pain, too many dead. I helped your people once, against orders. That is why I was marked as dead. My mother let the Empire believe I was gone. But if they know I am alive, they will kill me to protect their power." Ryan stared at her, stunned. The woman he had chosen, the one everyone had laughed at, was the heir to the very empire they had fought against. "Then we protect you," Ryan said firmly, "like you once protected us." The crew looked at him. He was their captain, and they trusted him. None argued. "Prepare defense systems," Ryan ordered. "Charge the shields and plot a course toward the gravity storm near Sector 9. The ship shook as the first enemy blast hit their shields. Sparks flew from the ceiling and warning lights flashed. The navigator shouted that the pursuers were locking weapons. Ryan took the controls himself, steering the ship through the asteroid belt. Rocks the size of houses tumbled past, glowing from the friction of near misses. Sira held onto a console, watching him fight to keep them alive. The human crew worked like one body, fast, brave, determined. For the first time in years, she felt something strange: hope. The Jirani ships followed relentlessly. One by one, they fired plasma bursts that tore across the void. The human ship returned fire, but their weapons were smaller, older. Ryan knew they couldn't last forever. Then he saw it: the storm. A swirling wall of light and gravity, a collapsing star at the edge of space. Entering it was suicide. But escaping the hunters wasn't possible either. He turned to Sira. "If I can blind their sensors, we might make it through." "That's madness," she said. "No one can survive that pull." Ryan gave her a faint smile. "We've survived worse." Before anyone could stop him, he sent power from every remaining engine to the front thrusters and dived toward the storm. The crew held on as the ship shook violently. The stars blurred into streaks of white and gold. The control panels flickered and went dark. Inside the storm, everything turned silent. The light outside bent and twisted. For a few seconds, there was no sound, no movement, only a strange glow filling the cabin. Then came the explosion. A massive wave of energy burst outward, scattering the Jirani ships in every direction. Their sensors fried instantly. Ryan's ship tumbled, spinning like a falling leaf. The artificial gravity failed, and everyone floated helplessly until the emergency systems kicked in. When they finally broke free of the storm, the engines died completely, leaving them drifting near a barren gray moon. Hours later, when the dust settled and the fires were out, the crew began repairs. Ryan sat by the medical bay with a bandaged arm, exhaustion heavy on his face. Sira entered quietly and knelt beside him. "You risked everything," she said softly. He looked at her and smiled weakly. "You saved me once, remember? I owed you." She shook her head. "You don't owe me anything. My people would have killed you all, and yet you saved me." Ryan's voice softened. "Maybe that's what peace really means, saving someone even when you don't have to." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the machines was the only sound. Later that night, Sira walked out onto the surface of the moon. The stars stretched endlessly above her. She took out the small pendant she always carried, the royal insignia of her family, and looked at it for a long time. Then she pressed it to the communicator and sent one last coded message across the void. "Mother," she whispered, "I'm alive, but I am no longer your heir. The war is over. Let it stay that way." Far away, In the grand hall of the Jirani throne world, the Empress received the message. She listened to her daughter's voice in silence. When it ended, she closed her eyes and said softly, "Then may she live free." She turned to her guards and gave a single order. No more pursuit. Back on the moon, Sira felt the pendant grow warm for a moment, the final reply from her mother. And then the signal faded. She smiled faintly, tears slipping down her cheeks. Ryan found her standing alone in the starlight. "You're finally free," he said gently. She turned toward him. "Thanks to you." He laughed quietly. "No, thanks to you. You reminded me that mercy still matters in this galaxy." They stood together, looking at the stars that had once separated their worlds. Somewhere far away, the first alliance between humans and Jirani was already forming. Rumors spread through the colonies about a human soldier who had chosen the least beautiful woman in the hall, only to discover she was the lost princess who ended the war. Years passed. On a peaceful colony world surrounded by forests and quiet rivers, a small house stood by the water. Ryan grew older, but his spirit remained strong. Sira tended the garden and helped the villagers with medicine and healing. No one called her princess anymore. To them, she was just Sira, the kind woman who always smiled at children and watched the sunsets with her husband. One evening, as the sun sank beyond the trees, Ryan sat beside her. The air smelled of flowers and distant rain. "Do you ever miss it?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I miss the stars sometimes, but not the throne. I used to think power was everything. Now I know peace is harder to win, and it's worth more than any crown." Ryan looked at her with quiet pride. "You changed the galaxy, Sira." She smiled. "No, we changed it together." As night fell, they sat in silence, watching the stars that had once witnessed their war now shining peacefully above them. The galaxy would remember them not as enemies or rulers, but as two souls who had chosen compassion over conquest.